How you doing tonight? It is IB Nation Sports Talk. I'm Sean Stiers. He is Jesse Stiers, and Jesse is coming to us from his car down by Lake Erie in Sandusky, Ohio, tonight. How's the scenery down there in Sandusky, Jess?
It's good. I'm actually I'm in Sandusky right along the water. There's this kind of parkway. I'm doing some work for the actual work about 30 minutes south of here, and I need to go back later tonight to take light readings, but you can't really take light readings until it gets dark. So I'm just kind of hanging out until it gets dark.
So you got to wait until it gets dark, and of course, we're at the time of year where it takes a little bit longer to actually get dark. So
Yeah,
don't
I'm
get into
glad that
any
we have a
Sandusky
show
trouble.
today because it's a good way to, kill some of this time right now, or else I'd just be sitting somewhere.
All right. Well, glad that we could help, and you're helping everybody else kill time right now as well. So, all right, hit that like button, and of course, subscribe, rate, review. We've got, I think, maybe an interesting show coming up for you. And Jason, by the way, likes the hat that you've got on, the brand new IB Nation hat. And as USMA says, Cedar Point land. That is right. You're like, can you see the roller coasters or anything from where you are? Are you that close, or where are you in
No,
relation to Cedar Point?
I'm not too sure where I am in relation to Cedar Point. It's been a while since I've been there, but I am in Cedar Point land. And I actually have another project that I'm doing in the actual city of Sandusky. So I might go drive by that one and make sure construction is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So
All right.
getting a lot of things done today over in Sandusky, Ohio.
All right. Sounds good. Well, hopefully the right things get done, I guess. We're doing a little stock watch today for Notre Dame. Whose stock is up, whose stock is down, whose stock is holding steady. Let's start with Marcus Freeman. Where do you think his stock is right now compared to a year ago?
I would say that Marcus Freeman's stock compared to a year ago has to be trending, upwards. And if you're looking at traditional stocks, I would say that he's maybe gained like 50 cents to $1 per stock per Marcus Freeman stock. And the reason why I say that is I think that Marcus Freeman has done a great job of recruiting once again. And now it is going to be his second year as a full-time head coach. And I believe that this roster and coaching staff is more Marcus Freeman-esque, meaning that I think he has more of his, footprint and handle on both of those. The roster, we're seeing some guys kind of depart from, Brian Kelly's kind of last class at Notre Dame. And then obviously the departure of a lot of coordinators and the incoming coordinators that have come through. So I would say, compared to last season, I think stock is up. And I'm more excited about the potential for the team this season. So I would say overall, Marcus Freeman's stock is up about 50 cents to $1.
Interesting. So you've got it 50 cents up, 50 cents to $1. I think at worst his stock is unchanged, and as you said, maybe even a little bit up right now. He's kind of the Teflon coach. It's like none of the bad stuff has stuck to Marcus Freeman so far. It's like I don't know if you remember the Seinfeld episode where Jerry, first Elaine throws his money out the window of the apartment, and then he finds money in his jacket, when he's getting ready to leave. Like everything, it all evens out for Jerry. And that's kind of like how it has been for Marcus Freeman in this first year plus, really, at Notre Dame. There aren't many coaches, I don't think, who could, on the heels of 5 consecutive double-digit win seasons, lose 4 games, and then be able to say that his stock is at least even, if not up a little bit after that, after losing 4 games. He took a big hit with the season with those losses to Stanford and Marshall, but then he climbed right back up. They beat Clemson, had good momentum going to the offseason with the bowl win and all that kind of stuff. And then, had, all the stuff happen since then. But to me, his stock really continues to hold steady. And I think what you said is the reason why. It's like recruiting seems to be his stability, because he's not resting on his laurels out there playing golf and, doing that kind of stuff. He's out there recruiting. He's got his staff out there recruiting. and he did this, round the world, not round the world, but this 5-day trip that he took last week, and they did the trip diary at und.com. Like, he was out in the Carolinas, he was out in Florida, he was at Under Armour in Maryland, and finished it off at the Kentucky Derby, and just all over the place. So I agree. I think at the very least it's even, if not up even a little bit right now compared to a year ago. And again, I think that's fairly unusual for a first year head coach who lost 4 games. And again, the previous 5 years, all those teams had won at least 10 games in a season. So he finds himself, I think, in a pretty good situation right now, really.
Yeah, I think this past season, the 8-4 season, and Marcus Freeman's first year really is kind of like his baseline, and I expect everything to kind of rise, from this point going forward. And I think from a year from now, we'll see that the Marcus Freeman stock has gone up significantly. So I say that everyone invests now, because I think you're going to be wishing that you had invested at this time next year.
Okay. Salty with some kind of conspiracy theories. He wants to know if anyone else thinks Jesse is out on a contract hit, and I'm giving you coded instructions. I mean, he does have his gold chain on there, so
I can't say, I can't disclose my information.
uh-huh. But D-Rock also says Freeman's not messing around, wants to win a natty and not wait at least 12 years to win one. That's, I mean, again, like, you keep people happy the way he's recruiting, but the key now is you got
You got
to
to
turn.
press those chips forward.
Yep, that's right. That's right. What about the program as a whole? Again, things kind of bottomed out, like with Marshall and Stanford last year, and then the rough off season, the roller coaster ride with, some of the departures, and, the whole Andy Ludwig debacle and all that kind of stuff. Like, where do you think the program is right now as a whole? Or like, do we associate, like, are Freeman and the football program one and the same essentially right now?
No, I think that Marcus Freeman as a head coach in the football program right now can be independent of each other. And I think that's kind of why, even though, Notre Dame has a football program, I don't think I think from last year, if you looked at stock, just based on how the season ended, some departures, on paper, you could say that Notre Dame has regressed as a program, and stock would be a little bit down compared to last season. And that's nothing bad, but that's just coming off of, like you said, 5 straight 10-win seasons, and then going 8-4 and losing, or sorry, 9-4, and then losing those games to Marshall and Stanford. I think those really hurt the programming and kind of set them back, at least for this past season. But I don't think that that is any indication of what's going to happen going forward. And like most stocks, you see kind of a dip before you see, some sort of surge. And that is something, again, that I think is going to happen this season with Notre Dame. Is I think as a football program, they took a little bit of a dip last year, but they have flushed out kind of the fat. They have added a lot of high-level recruits and really gained a lot of depth for this upcoming season. And so I think you're going to see a resurgence in the Notre Dame football stock this upcoming season after just taking a minor dip this past season.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest dip between the ability or inability or whatever, to like getting the staff hired the way they wanted without it blowing up in their face. That was kind of the bottoming out point of the offseason when the whole Ludwig thing came, and then things really stabilized for a while. And then, of course, you get through spring, and then you kind of have a flurry of transfers all in 1 week. Two of them relatively higher profile between Diggs and Tyler Buckner, obviously, but then you throw in Prince Kollie as well. But again, like, I feel like things have really kind of stabilized, and you look at it and it's like, just who the transfers were, who's coming in after them, all they've still got. So I feel like the program is in really good shape, and really, like when you look at the national picture, they are thought of pretty well right now. They're like pretty much a consensus top 12, top 13 team heading to the season. And that's really a good position to be in. So I think that I think stock again, at least stable for Notre Dame after maybe taking a little bit of dip in the offseason. So what about the assistant coaches? Like which assistant's stock do you think has risen the most?
Um, that's a good question. I would say, and you're gonna have to forgive me because I forget some of these people's names. So I can tell you position group wise. I think the defensive line coach Al Washington's stock has
So you didn't
risen.
forget his name. You got his name out there.
I got to think about it for just a little bit. I think his stock has risen just off of being able what we saw this spring really, and then being able to get the transfer from Ohio State, uh, John Batiste Baptist, and just the overall performance that we saw in practice in spring games. I think that his stock has risen a little bit after he took a lot of beating last year, and I think that his stock was probably one of the ones that took the biggest hit last season.
For sure.
Another stock I see going up this season so far is Chancey Stuckey, wide receivers coach. I think the wide receiver group has, really improved tremendously. And a lot of that has to do with Marcus Freeman and Stuckey's ability to recruit all of these young freshmen and get them in here early, work them in as early enrollees, and really get them some time this spring. So I see both of their stocks on the up and up. And honestly too, I see Al Golden's stock go up a little bit. I think after his first season, it's hard to implement a new defense. It's hard, to instill or install a new system. And I think that we again saw the defense run just a little bit smoother this offseason. Things look to be better synchronized. And so I would also say that someone like Al Golden's stock has risen as well. So for me, the top stock risers are Chauncey Stuckey, Al Washington, and Al Golden.
Yeah, I would put Washington in terms of the biggest risers. I would put Washington at the top of the list. He really going into the spring and still going toward fall as well, but at least like he's passed the first part of the test for him with the development of guys like Jason Onye and seeing Jordan Botello and there'll be some questions probably with Junior Tui Alamaka a little bit, but I think that there were still good enough things to see from him and the rest of those guys on the defensive line. That's what we had to see because it was a very inexperienced group of guys, and we saw some really good things across the board from that group. Big thing for him, continuing with the recruiting. Like need some hits on the recruiting, and they're out there obviously on the trail after some guys, but did get a guy like Bryce Young obviously. So that's important. And I agree with you on Chancey Stuckey as well. His was already high. So like how high it can go, I don't know. But between development as well as recruiting with those three freshmen and then, the fourth freshman coming in, and then you've got more guys lined up for next year as well. Like it's going about as well as you could expect there. Someone a second ago mentioned Mike Mickens. I think his is still good. Like, I don't think that it has fallen in the least bit. It's just hard for like it didn't necessarily go up a lot this spring. I think it's really kind of stabilized. What about this? Like, I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Like those would be the main ones. I like what your thoughts about Al Golden. I think at least his stock has recovered a little bit. I at least
Yeah,
feel a little bit more bullish on him. Again, like Vince and I were talking about some of the stat markers and stuff like that yesterday, and deceptively, it was a good defense. Like statistically across the
it
board, it
was.
was a good defense, but it still comes down to can you be better? Can you tackle more consistently? Can you get stops in the red zone? That's ultimately, I think, what the success or failure of that, the entire defense is going to come down to. Flashed off and on there a second. I was worried about you. Now, here's an interesting one to me is Chris O'Leary, the safeties coach. Crying Belly is the handle that he has. He says O'Leary's stock is rising. And I'm a little bit, like as we look, I don't think there are any huge fallers, but like where I look at Chris O'Leary, I love the development side of what he's doing. Like getting guys, like the transition of Xavier Watson, Ramon Henderson coming over from playing cornerback and playing wide receiver and turning them into college ready guys. But the recruiting at that position is has got to improve, basically. Now you got guys like Minnick and Adon who were both injured during the spring, so we didn't really get a chance to see them. Most likely, like Minnick had some good kind of early returns, but like to me, that's the biggest thing with O'Leary is, and maybe that's why he got some NFL interest. Like they recognize the development that he's had, and obviously in the NFL, you don't have to worry about recruiting. But to me, recruiting is the biggest question. So I'm not necessarily saying it's down, and I can't think of it like across the board. I don't think that there are any coaches who are down, but O'Leary maybe is at least flat until that recruiting side comes up with the safeties, I think.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
So, what about the players? Which players do you think we've seen the most stock rise from?
This is a kind of a funny concept to me because I don't know if you know this, but you can actually, I don't think you can do it at the college level, but I know you can definitely do it for professional football players. But they have basically now, some sort of basically, with the legalization of sports gambling, you can buy stocks of like individual players and basically, invest in them and then kind of show that, you think that their career is going to kind of take off or have some sort of upward trajectory. So I think that's overall kind of cool. And that's kind of the way I looked at it for the college level. I think, starting on offense, some guys that really whose stock has risen. Number one is Andrew Kostofik on the offensive line. I think his, overall stock has definitely gone up. I know there was another offensive lineman who's filling the spot this year, and his name isn't coming to my mind right this second, but he's another one whose stock is rising and had a really good spring game and, was basically working in with the number ones along the offensive line. And then you start to look at the wide receiver position. I think
Billy Stroud. That's who
Billy Stroud. That's exactly the name I was looking for. So Kristofik and Billy Stroud on the offensive line, I think their stock has risen, tremendously. And then you start kind of working your way to the perimeter. And I think Jaden Greathouse, I think his stock is, and I think that's just the obvious one. I think his stock has definitely risen. And, I would say Tobias Merriweather, but I think his stock was already kind of up there, and it's up to him at this point to kind of, go out there and with Sam Hartman and really show why his stock is so high. And then I think Audric Estime's stock has gone up too, just with the departure of Logan Diggs, and then having, Jabron Payne and Jadarian Price behind him. Both of those guys' stocks went up as well because, Logan Diggs leaving, that's just going to give Audric Estime the opportunity to be the lead back. So I would say his stock is going to go up. And then I would say, just with the younger guys, their stock is going to go up too because Audric Estime isn't going to, take every handle, every carry. So, based on last season, we saw that there's going to be some sort of split between the running backs. So I would just say all of the running backs who, are basically going to be in the starting rotation, their stock went up with, Logan Diggs departing and Chris Tyree going to wide receiver. So I think, after the year that the running back room had last year, I think their stock only went up. And now you start looking at the defensive side of the ball. I think Anye, I think him on the defensive line, I think his stock went up. I think Botello's stock went up, but the thing with Botello is he's got to kind of prove it. His stock that has to translate into in-game play and dominance in the game. But his stock has risen, and that's just because with the opportunity and kind of the number one quote unquote number one guy at his position, his stock is definitely going to go up. And then I think at working to the second level, Bertrand and Kaiser, those guys are who they are. I don't think their stock has necessarily changed. I don't think Maris Leofau's stock has changed at all. But I would say Jalen Sneed and Nolan Ziegler's stock have bumped up a little bit. I would say that especially Nolan Ziegler more so than Jalen Sneed because we've seen Jalen Sneed before. And I definitely think that Ziegler showed more. And I think he is amongst the linebackers. I think his stock has risen the most. And then you start looking at the secondary. I don't really see much fluctuation within the secondary itself. You know who the guys are in the secondary. And there's obviously guys like Benjamin Morris who are going to be your big play guys. And then there's just more of, I would say, role players along the secondary. I don't think that there's guys whose stock have, necessarily risen to, to extreme levels. So really defensively, I would say, Botello, and Anya along the defensive line. And then looking at the second level, Nolan Ziegler would be someone whose stock rose as well at linebacker.
For sure. Like if I'm looking, I'll start with the defense since that's where you finished. Like the biggest risers of the spring, I think, were Anya and Ziegler because they both kind of came from nowhere. You know, the guys who barely played at all. Anya's been here 2 years, Ziegler just 1 year, but guys who barely played at all, neither of them we were talking about heading into the spring, but both of them made big impressions, and both of them are at the very least going to be on the two deep. They both have a chance to make a lot of impact once the spring rolls around. So, you know, for him for sure. And, you know, like Jason says, Osbury, he made some impact as well, showed himself. I would still put Ziegler ahead of Osbury, you know, as like the biggest riser. Again, like I'm saying the absolute biggest, Anya and Ziegler on the defensive side of the ball, because again, we weren't talking about them at all, and they're both going to play a lot next year, you know, and not just on special teams, but on the two deep. You know, like Jaden Mickey's stock came up a little bit. I think he had a nice rebound, you know, but like the thing with him is kind of what you talked about with Botello, because he was the guy we were all talking about, and that's what we've got to be careful about with some of these guys. There are always spring stars that don't pan out. You want them all to work out, but Jaden Mickey's stock, I felt like, bounced back up after an up and down season last fall, after he had a great spring a year ago after early enrolling. So it at least bounced back up. On the offensive side of the ball, I don't think you mentioned Jabron Payne, and he's one that I would put, you know, right up there as well because of the fact that he got some opportunities. So you got the opportunities now because of some injuries. Both Diggs and Jadarian Price were injured, but he didn't just get the opportunity. He wasn't just a body out there. He was out there making plays. I think that they, you know, kind of found out that this is a guy who they can rely on. And so I'm interested to see what that translates into with this running back room, especially with Diggs gone now, and you've only got 4 running backs back there. Tobias, you mentioned, you know, again, like I feel like if he had just a couple plays that he was able to make in the blue gold game, we'd be talking about him differently right now. But he didn't. He was matched up with the quarterback, who unfortunately didn't complete many passes and is down in Tuscaloosa now. So we're not able to talk about him, obviously, the way we're able to talk about Greathouse. But Greathouse was obviously one that jumped up. And really, all 3 freshman receivers had their moments, and Tobias did as well during the spring. It's just that Greathouse is the one that showed up the most in the blue gold game. And then, you know, like some other people have thrown some other names out there that I don't, you know, disagree with. And like Salty's saying, the great one stock has risen and split twice. And of course, he's talking about Jaden Greathouse. Crying Belly is saying, book it with Davis Sherwood. Okay, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Davis Sherwood. And Jason has already mentioned Osbury. And then Coffees for Closers, Gino Gaduli, IPO, but he'll buy it, he says. And, you know, I guess my jury's still out a little bit with Gino Gaduli, just because we really haven't got to see enough yet. Like, we expected that Sam Hartman was going to be a good quarterback, and he showed us in the blue gold game that he's a good quarterback that looks like a veteran. I think where Gino Gaduli's money is going to be made is how he develops these young guys who've got to back up Sam Hartman this year. That's
Yeah,
where
I
we're
don't
really
think
going to
that
find out about him.
Gino will get a fair assessment probably 2 years, 3 years from now, assuming that he's still at the program. And that's not me saying I don't think he's going to be at the program, but like you said, Sam Hartman, this is like his 6th, 7th, 8th year playing quarterback in the college level.
Right.
There's only so much that Gino can obviously he's going to do things to, help enhance the game and probably acclimate him more to, Parker's offense. But like you said, his real work is cut out for him after Hartman leaves, and you start talking about Menchie, Carr, a little bit of peanut butter and jelly, and what those guys are able to do, who the starter is going to be, and how that starter looks, basically a year from now when we're talking, going into the start of the 2024 season. So I think Gino's he's kind of flatline right now, but he's definitely got the opportunity to really, his stock to really take off, depending on how Minchie and Carr do in the upcoming seasons.
Any players that you can think of who you would say, well, their stock is maybe down a little bit right now?
Um, I mean, the obvious is Maris Leofau, and
I don't know that it's down. It's like it's kind of the same because like at the very least he's sitting at the top of the two deep right now. Whether or not there's total confidence in all that. I don't think it's fallen anymore. eh, But I get your point. I get your point.
I really don't. I can't really think of someone who is like you would almost think of them as like a liability. I feel pretty confident across the board that guys are either kind of at your base or that their stock is really up. I guess I should say that guys either have kind of like a flat line, and maybe that's just because we've seen them before and we know what's really expected, and their game is really consistent. It hasn't really taken off to that next level yet. So to me, I don't know that I've seen anyone kind of regress um, or
Well,
decline, across the board.
Jason and I are thinking along the same lines. This was going to be my point. To me, the guys whose stock really fell the most are the guys who decided to leave. Specifically, well, I mean, all three of them, really. Obviously, Tyler Buckner was a starter last year. He wasn't going to be able to overcome Sam Hartman, so he leaves. Logan Diggs, and Prince Collie, who was finding himself not rising up the depth chart the way that he thought he was supposed to be able to. He was caught from behind by some younger guys. So I would say that their stock probably fell the most, and they're gone as a result. And I really don't think there are a whole lot of other guys who we would look at right now. And like no one was really overcome on the depth chart by anybody in the spring. So I think that everybody else is at least holding pretty tight right now, feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And looking at Diggs, Buckner, and Collie, and man, who's the? I don't know why I can't think of the wide receiver right now. Lorenzo Styles. I think of those four. I think Lorenzo Styles stock really took the
I
hardest
forgot
hit.
about Lorenzo. It's funny that I'm mentioning transfers and I didn't even mention Style. That obviously took a huge hit. Yeah.
I think his took the largest hit just because, and I don't mean this in a malicious way, but I mean when you're being considered of moving from one position to a completely different side of the ball, I think that's just an indication that your stock at that position is just not very good, and so they're trying to figure
Yeah,
out a way to maximize your stock. And that was the overall thought process of why they wanted to move him over to the defensive side. So I would say, yeah, if you're looking at it in that kind of perspective, that definitely Lorenzo Styles stock took the biggest hit this offseason.
for sure. Yep. Great point. I'm glad you brought him up because again, that just like for whatever reason uh, didn't pop into my head. I guess maybe because he was the first guy and all that, all the drama came afterwards. But I wanted to be sure and mention tonight CJ Carr, of course, the quarterback from Michigan, who's, I mean, I think most of our listeners, viewers know who CJ Carr is, but he'll be here at Notre Dame next season. And his family founded an organization called Chad Tough. It's an organization that they're raising money in the fight against something called DIPG. It's a rare cancer. It's in honor of CJ's late brother Chad, who passed away a few years ago from DIPG. And again, they're raising money to help battle DIPG. And they've got a big fundraising auction going on this week. And I'm going to post the link to it right here. I'm going to post it in the chat. So that link is live. And the big auction item, there are a lot of different auction items. You can go to that link and there are different pages on the website. And there's like a couple, there's multiple pages where like there's the main, there's the page with the item that I'm about to tell you about, which is really cool if you're a Notre Dame fan, but they've got a lot of other things that you can bid on in there as well. But so the big one that Notre Dame fans will be interested in, Your group of 4 people is going to have an opportunity to experience one of the biggest rivalries in college football this October when Notre Dame hosts USC. So you're going to have a chance to tour the Notre Dame facilities early the day of the game. That'll be followed by the opportunity to join the team at the Basilica, where you will walk with the team to the stadium. And then you'll enter the stadium through the tunnel, have a chance to watch the pregame warm-ups, and then you'll also watch the Fighting Irish and the Trojans battle it out from great seats. And you'll get they say don't forget your picture of touchdown Jesus. Parking pass is included. Participants cannot be in grades 9 through 12 or be a college athlete. And I believe that is because the tickets and all this has been donated by Notre Dame football. So you cannot be in grades 9 through 12 to be a part of this group of 4. But and it also says if a different game is preferred, that'll be an option as well. But I don't know why you would pass up on Notre Dame and USC if you had the chance. So that is the big auction item at this website. And it is the Chad Tuff website. And again, they've got it all explained on there, the Notre Dame experience. And then they've got other auction items as well. Like they've got looks like a Sauce Gardner autograph football. There's all kinds of different stuff in there. There's like an Albert Pujols autographed baseball card. There's a Michigan State football experience. There's different Michigan experiences in there, and just all kinds of different stuff that you can bid on in this auction on the website. So if you go to that website that I just posted in the chat, you'll be able to find it. We lost Jesse, and I have no idea where he is right now. So hopefully he is back very soon. But so there's a lot of cool stuff in there. And again, even if you don't, I think they're keeping this up for the next 4 days. It looks like it's going to be up through the rest of the week. But there's an Argentina vacation in there. There's a pickleball thing in there. There's Big Ten championship game and some stuff with Tracy Wolfson and all different kind of stuff. Obviously, they're from Michigan, so there is some Michigan stuff that's in there as well. There's a Dickie V experience that's in there. So you just you go online and you can bid for any of this different stuff in this online auction. And again, they are raising money in CJ Carr's family founded this organization, and they are raising money in the fight against DIPG, which is a rare cancer that claimed CJ's brother Chad's life a few years back. So go check that out if you get a chance. I know you'd like to be doing the Basilica walk with the team for the USC game, wouldn't you, Jess?
Yeah, I gotta find a group of 4 people who would also be down to bid on that. I think I'd get outbid pretty quickly, but I would love to drive the bidding price up for a good cause, which I am right. known for
You're
doing.
good at that. You're good at that. That's right. Brian will be talking about this on his show tomorrow as well. But there's kind of the nuts and bolts. And again, I posted it in the chat here on the feed, and we'll make sure that we post it in the show post and description and all that kind of stuff as well. Jesse, before you go away, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire. I think my phone knew that the fire was coming because it shut down because my phone got too hot, and so I had to quickly turn on the car and blast the AC onto my phone to get the temperature to cool down a little bit.
It's weird how it does that sometimes. You needed like a Ziploc bag and a bag of ice or something that you can throw it in. But all right, we better get going then. Make sure. USMA 87 says one of the things that that you can also bid on in that auction is throwing out the first pitch at a Tigers game, which would definitely be cool. All right, so we've been talking stock on today's show, Jesse. Buy low, sell high is the principle. Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame player whose stock you would buy heading into the summer and toward fall training camp is blank.
The player stock that I would buy low and sell high is Junior Tuihalamaka. I believe, I've been raving about him this whole offseason. I like the transition from him to linebacker to defensive line because he has the speed of a linebacker, but still has the strength of a defensive lineman. And I think that his versatility is going to be very vital this upcoming season. I think you're going to see him in a lot of different packages and fronts. He's going to be a guy who you can mismatch and kind of glue in wherever you need. So I would say, looking at someone's stock who is like low right now compared to others and who could really boom and sell high, I think Junior Tuihalamaka would be my person.
Yeah, I think that one is a good one as well. He's very intriguing with that transition from middle linebacker to that Viper defensive end paired up along with Jordan Botelho. And Vince and I kind of talked. We had three different duos yesterday, and which one we were most confident in, and the Botelho Tuihalamaka was one of them, and we both feel really good about that duo. So that's a good one. I'm going to go with a guy who didn't get to practice at all this spring, but who had a really great spring last year. He's coming off the Achilles injury, Jadarian Price. And because of where this running back room is right now, when you look at, you talked about Audric Estime's stock really being up after the departure of Logan Diggs. And I talked about, Jabron Payne's stock is up as well. But Jadarian Price is, if the guy is healthy, and just based on the fact we did get to see him start running some sprints and stuff like that toward the end of spring practice, and they're getting into the summer now, I think that is the guy to watch once again. Coming out of last spring, all the buzz was about Jadarian Price and what he was going to be able to do. And now, if he's coming back, that's who I'm going with, is Jadarian Price. That's whose stock I'm buying right now. Sticking with some stock swapping, what two college football teams would you buy stock in for this season, and which two would you sell their stock right now?
So this is a tough question. I think I'll start with my first sell. I would sell Florida State's stock going into the season. I'm not completely sold on them being, kind of as highly touted as everyone kind of puts them out to be. And I know they have a supposed kind of quarterback that's supposed to be pretty good, but you got to be able to prove it. And I think Florida State, really hasn't shown anything yet this season. So I would definitely sell their stock. A team stock that I would buy is I would buy Oregon stock out in the Pac-12. I think that they are going to be much better this season. I don't think Bo Nix gets enough credit for being really a solid quarterback. And I think anything is really possible out in the Pac-12. I think outside of USC, we kind of know what's expected there. But I think that, Oregon was very close last season, and they ended up playing in a really good bowl game and beat a really good North Carolina team, in my opinion. So I am buying their stock. Another team stock that I'm buying is honestly Notre Dame's. And that's not just because of, this show or Irish Breakdown or anything like that. I just genuinely think that they're kind of undervalued right now. And they have a lot of good things on paper. They've improved at the quarterback position. They're going to improve at the wide receiver position. Their offensive line is going to, be the steady kind of constant that it is. And then their defense, I think their defense is going to improve compared to last year. And that they already had a pretty solid defense last year, but I think they're going to be more experienced, quicker, and just overall better this year. So I would also buy Notre Dame stock going into this season. And then honestly, the last one I would sell Michigan stock. And the reason why I would sell Michigan stock is I don't think that Jim Harbaugh can do it 3 years in a row. I don't think that he can beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. I don't think he can win the Big Ten 3 years in a row. And I think that their window was ultimately last year when they had the shot to play TCU in the college football playoff and failed to go to the national championship. So I think, overall Michigan stock is going to be down compared to last season. I think they're going to be one of those teams looking out, on the outside in at the college football playoff this year after making it the past 2 seasons. I know a lot of people are really high on Michigan. Like a lot of people I see have them in their top 3. I'm just really not buying it. JJ McCarthy's not a great quarterback. I think that, they've kind of relied on that kind of old school, Jim Harbaugh offense, but I don't think that can
Mhm.
go that far. And I think that their running backs aren't going to be able to sustain the success that they had the past few seasons.
Yeah, interesting. It the two cells that you have, Michigan and Florida State, were both under consideration. I considered both of them on my sell list. What it came down to for both of them is I think that they just have easy enough schedules that you're right. Like, will Michigan get to the college football playoff again? Yeah, I think that would be that would be stretching it a little bit. I still think they're going to be right around the top 10 when it's all said and done. The question is going to be what kind of dent Penn State is able to make in there, because a lot of people are really high on Penn State this season. Like, is Penn State going to be able to at least split with Michigan or Ohio, and Ohio State? And if it's Michigan they beat, does Ohio State beat Michigan as well? But so I left them off. And again, like Florida State, really their season's going to come down to they've got LSU early on once again. They've got Clemson, and of course they have Miami. Those three games right there. And I was considering a sell, but I kind of held off on them. My sells are Texas. Their last year in the Big 12. I saw someone was buying on Texas. They're obviously overhyped every year. They lost 5 games again last year. They lost their best player, Bijan Robinson, and everyone in the conference I think is going to be shooting for them this year in their last year in the Big 12. So I'm selling on Texas, and I'm selling on another orange team as well, and it's Tennessee, because they lose Hendon Hooker. We'll see what Joe Milton gives them, but I think last year was a little bit of a lightning in a bottle, and it was their first double-digit win season in 15 years. So odds are they come back to earth a little bit this year. They've got to play Alabama, they've got to play Georgia, they get Texas A&M and South Carolina back to back. That's not going to be an easy back to back. So I'm selling the two orange teams. I agree with you. I'm buying Notre Dame stock right now as well because of where they are. I feel like that they're in a really good position, kind of sitting on the cusp of the top 10. I do think they're going to be a playoff contender when it's all said and done. And I'm going to buy Washington as well. You went with Oregon. I'm going to go with Washington, with a guy that a lot of people think is the second best quarterback in the Pac-12, and Michael Penix Jr., after Caleb Williams, obviously, but they've added some secondary help through the transfer portal. They've added a little bit to their backfield. Their season's going to come down to back-to-back games, USC and Utah, to start off the month of November for Washington. So at least for right now, I think that their stock has a chance to rise really high before they get to November. Is your phone doing okay still?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Okay. It sounded like you were bouncing it off the dashboard or something. I've got another Notre Dame question for you. When it comes to Notre Dame's football helmets, do you prefer the shiny laminate helmets that they have right now, or would you rather they go back to painting the helmets? So, like, they paint the helmets, but you've got, like the more dull kind of look. This is something Brian was talking about recently. Which do you prefer?
I prefer the new ones. I like the shiny. And the reason why I like that is because Notre Dame is known for the Golden Dome. And I think that the helmets are a very accurate representation of the Golden Dome. And when I think of golden, I think of shiny, I think of bright, and I think of, gold. But I don't, those dull ones, that just doesn't remind me really of gold. It reminds me of like a dark kind of mustardy almost color. So yeah, I'm all aboard on the newer ones just because of, again, they remind me more of golden. I like the sparkle, I like the splash, I like, how they kind of replicate the Golden Dome.
Yeah, I wish, the painting the helmets tradition is really cool. And like they did that for several years, basically until the Brian Kelly era rolled around, when they started, dabbling and finding it's the new ones with the laminate, they just look too good, especially on TV, whether it's night or day. The sparkle in those helmets, I think it looks really cool. It is really sharp. They stand out from virtually every other gold helmeted team in the nation. Like Boston College still kind of has that old dull look. Like when Navy wears theirs, it's that old dull, just gold spray painted look. Notre Dame's stand out so much better. And when you're on national TV as much as they are, I think that they really need it because they're never going to change their helmets that much. And I think that where you are right now, you need that sharp sparkle pop coming off those helmets, whether it's a night game or a day game. So I like them. Again, I do miss the tradition of the painting of the helmets. I think it was a really cool tradition, but just from a look standpoint, I don't think you can beat the current gold that they have. they're still giving you they're still giving you a hard time, Jess or Salty. He wants to know what that noise was. He thinks you're out there buying weapons, and I'm giving you coded messages for your Sandusky trip there. So, all right, the NFL schedule release for the upcoming season is this week, Thursday night. It'll be released. As the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Chiefs, of course, will play the first game of the season. They'll get a Thursday night game. It'll be a home game. Here are their home opponents for the season. You've got, of course, the AFC West, the Broncos, Chargers, and Raiders. And then they will also play the Eagles, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, Chicago Bears, and Detroit Lions at home. So which of those teams would you want the Chiefs to open against?
Honestly, I want to say the Eagles, but that's just a rematch too early. To me, you can't really go with a divisional opponent because I think that divisional opponents are more so, for the middle of the season, that kind of middle chunk of the season, middle third of the season, I guess you could say. And then the Eagles too. So can you repeat those teams, not the Eagles and not out of the AFC West?
Sure. The other teams are Buffalo, Cincinnati, Miami, Chicago, and Detroit.
I would have to say either Buffalo or Cincinnati because I think those are two teams that, obviously they've played before. And those are also very solid teams who, going into the season, you would say that they have really strong playoff aspirations. And you want to put a game on as the opening night game that's going to catch a lot of attention. So you want two really well matched up teams. So I would have to say Cincinnati or Buffalo. But really, I like the going out of the conference. So I would have to say Cincinnati. And that would be my final choice.
Cincinnati's who you're going. I don't want to see them play the Eagles. I don't want a rematch of the Super Bowl right off the bat. I mean, I think save that for middle to late October, maybe even early November, something like that. I think I think you could make a case for the Dolphins, just considering you've got Tua and Tyreek Hill in that whole thing. And as long as Tua is healthy, I think that would actually be a really great game. And you've got the Tyreek Hill connection going back to Kansas City. I think that would be a good one. So I'll go outside the box a little bit. I'll go with that. I agree. I think the obvious choices are either Buffalo or Cincinnati. But you look at those Eagles, Bills, Bengals games, those are games that if you put them on in a primetime game somewhere in the middle of the season, you're going to get a huge rating no matter what, because they're all going to be Super Bowl contenders. You don't necessarily have to put them at the front of the schedule, I don't think. But I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. But I'll just go with Tyreek Hill going back to Kansas City with Tua with the Miami Dolphins in week 1 against Kansas City.
Speaking of schedules and games, did you see that this season no network owns any games anymore?
Yeah, they're going to like it used to be. If you had an NFC and an AFC team playing, the TV assignment was based on who the visiting team was. So if the Eagles, for example, were visiting Kansas City, it would be a Fox game. But they've done away with that now, and now they're basically all up for grabs. And I think that might have had something to do with Vince and I were talking yesterday. Peter King was reporting that they might have to delay the schedule release because they were still trying to get it all together. And then they came out later in the afternoon and said, no, we're going to get it. But I think he said something about these TV assignments, because of the way things are being done differently now, might have thrown a wrench into things a little bit, but they're going to be on track with it. It's going to be different. You might have some you're going to have some different announcers calling games that you haven't been used to, depending on what team you're a fan of for the last few years.
I like it. I like the fact that there's going to be a lot of variation, because it
Mhm.
seems like oftentimes a lot of teams kind of get stuck with the same broadcasts, majority of the season.
We are not Marshall says, who else is stoked for year 38 of the Bears rebuild? He's ready.
Speaking of Chicago and rebuilds, I think I'm going to go out on a conspiracy here, and I'm just going to leave it at this. The NHL lottery was pretty rigged last night for Chicago to get the number one pick. I mean, Connor Bedard, I know this is my limited hockey knowledge, but Connor Bedard is a very generational talent, and I don't think that Chicago was very deserving. And I think that a team that's been, part of the original six, I think that the NHL kind of rigged it for Chicago to get that number one pick this season. I think there were, more deserving teams, but that's how the lottery works. But to me, the system seemed a little bit rigged.
You're such a conspiracy theorist.
It's fun it's fun because then you get people riled up.
I guess so. I wasn't paying attention closely enough to.
Well,
I did see like one tweet about it this morning, I think.
There was an instance where I guess the guy who was announcing the lottery order announced the pick before it even they went to commercial, and he blurted out who was going to have what pick and everything. And so there's a lot of conspiracies going around that it could be rigged.
Yeah. Rom, like Jesse, it's not televised. No teams moved from 4 to 16, and only Chicago moved up. Rigged. Oh,
that's what I mean.
And then Chi-Town is jeering and heckling you right now.
It's just it's obvious that the NHL wanted this stud in a big market. They didn't want him going to Anaheim or Columbus potentially. They wanted him in Chicago, and so that makes sense to me.
Big conspiracy. All right. The NCAA is considering a change to the college basketball charging rule. It would make the defender gain position before the ball handler plants their foot to leap into a shot. The defender previously has only had to be in position before the player was in the air. So do you buy or sell this possible change?
I sell this. There's no reason to tweak rules, and especially when it's the same rule as the NBA is. If you are established before, basically the player has lifted off into the air or taken flight, then it's a charge. And I don't think that, in a game where I think charges are they're big momentum shifters. And I think it takes away the power from the defense a little bit. And I don't like that. I think it's already hard enough to play defense as is. And again, I like things that translate across the board. And, these guys are going to be going from college to NBA. So I say don't mess with the rule. I think it's already hard enough to play defense.
I like it. It's like you get into the NCAA tournament and it turns into such a mess. And I think it can, like the way these officials call games, I don't like it. I don't like the late slide to get into position. So I like them actually having to be in position earlier than later, because I do think that there are too many times, like, what is an offensive player supposed to do once they have left the ground, and a player is still sliding over in front of them? So I think that it is too easy to draw a charge in college basketball, actually. So I like this rule. I like the fact that they're doing this tweak. Potentially, they've still got to approve it, but I like the fact that they're at least looking at doing this. Had a few that popped up with the chance. Joe said Notre Dame baseball is trending up. Well, they were before the weekend.
Yeah, they took a tough series to NC State.
They're really in trouble, actually. Right.
They got it. If they really want to feel good about themselves, they not only need to take 2 or 3 from Boston College, they need a clean sweep at Boston College.
They need to sweep out the regular season, to have any chance of an at-large bid, I think. And
semis the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I was going to say they're putting themselves into a situation now where, they might even have to go all the way to the ACC championship, to get an at-large. Obviously, if they win the ACC,
it just really sucks because they started off really slow against some teams that I think if they played now that they would handle their business against.
I agree. I agree. Jason wants to know, going back to what teams you're buying or selling, are you buying or selling Colorado?
I'm buying Colorado, actually. I think Dion, everyone's giving Dion a hard time. I think Dion knows how to win, and that's proven throughout his career and his track record so far as a coach. And I get it. It's hard. It's going to be harder and different in a Power Five, but I think Colorado is really going to start trending upwards. And if it's not this year, I think you'll see, major strides definitely in the next couple seasons. I would hold Deion Sanders to the same standard that I held Marcus Freeman to. I didn't expect Marcus Freeman to go out there in his first year and be absolutely perfect, at Notre Dame, and considering the level at which Notre Dame plays at. And I think Colorado obviously is not nearly as known for its football program as Notre Dame, but I still think Deion's going to struggle a little bit this year. But I think year two is really where I'm going to be, crucial or more harsh on someone like Deion and the Colorado program.
I'm buying them long term. I mean, right now, they've got a pretty low bar. The Vegas over under, the last I saw was 3.5. Their
Oh,
win total for
I
the
got to take
season.
that somewhere.
I think so. I like the over on that. I mean, 3.5 is not a very big number, so I definitely like the over on that. I don't care about like a lot of these outlets have tried to spin this that there is a mass exodus, like people, like these players were leaving Dion. Like it's the other way
No,
around.
Deion
Dion
told
was
him to get out.
forcing them out. Yeah, and there's a big difference in how things have gone down out there. Oops, I accidentally unstarred Chi-Town, but he was asking earlier what we thought about that Alabama baseball scandal, and we touched on it a little bit last week. It is just nuts to see the head coach of a Power Five, like not just Power Five, but the SEC, like the premier college baseball conference in the country, getting fired for placing bets, not just placing bets on his own team. As someone pointed out last week, he wasn't Pete Rose betting on his team to win. He bet allegedly on his team to lose to LSU, and that's what got him fired. Some large sums, 2 large bets were placed that they would lose to LSU, and that's what ultimately got him fired. It's just nuts.
There's just no way else to spin it. The guy's just an idiot. How do you,
Yeah,
as a
and there's
as a
that too.
Division One baseball coach, how do you think that these things won't get back to you? Anyone who gets caught up in any sort of these scandals, it's just you're in a higher magnifying glass than the normal person, and the fact that you believe that you won't be that won't get caught, it's stupid to me.
Chi-Town wants to know if we think that the Bama baseball team will get the SMU death penalty. I don't think so. I
No,
think
it's
that they,
nothing on them. It's
yeah,
one person specifically.
yeah. It's not like
And it's
they
not
were
like
out
recruiting
like
violations or any of
exactly.
that kind of stuff.
I mean, what's crazier is now you've got Iowa and Iowa State football players who are all involved in this big gambling thing as well. Like, I mean, that's the whole gambling aspect. That was a big concern when you're talking about involving college sports. And like, I didn't even realize you could place bets on college baseball until this whole thing came up. So no, I don't think they'll get the death penalty. I think they fired the head coach. They'll move on from it the best they can. But
I've
it's
heard
just
uh I've
it
heard some
definitely
rumors
sends a
going
warning.
around.
What's that?
I said I've heard some rumors going around about the state of Ohio's gaming commission as a whole. I think that they're seriously considering kind of shutting it down. And that's just stuff I've heard. It might be just blowing smoke, but
Well,
again,
you
it's
guys just got sports gambling at the start of the year, didn't you?
yeah, we did.
So are you saying shutting it down completely or just college sports that they're
I was
considering
talking about
shutting down?
Iowa, not Ohio.
Oh, Iowa. I thought you said Ohio. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wow.
Just what
Crazy.
I've heard.
Yeah. All right. Last question tonight. If you could go back in time, what sports moment would you have loved to be at?
Oh, so I got to look at this through, baseball and football were my jam. Um, those are the sports I love the most, the ones I obviously played for a really long time. The Cowboys have done nothing since my existence. I guess I would have to go back and say I would have loved to have been at Wrigley Field during the 2016 World Series and just being a part of the game, and then being able to hang out in Wrigleyville afterwards, go to the bars, celebrate, whatever it might be. I think that that is the one that I would go back to. And with with Chicago playing in Cleveland, I actually almost had the opportunity to go to Cleveland because it was very close. It was closer to Cleveland than it was Chicago, based on where I lived at the time in Adrian, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But I had actually quite a scenario going on in my apartment at the time, and so we weren't actually allowed to leave our apartment during the World Series. So yeah, that's the moment I would go with, though, being at Wrigley Field for the Cubs World Series.
Not a bad one. I'm going to go with Derek on this. I'll go back to my childhood. I'll say 1980 United States versus Russia in the Olympics, and Miracle on Ice. That's what I would go with for sure. That's when I remember. It was not live; it was tape delayed, but I remember watching it on TV as a kid, and that's the one that I would go back to. Lake Placid, Miracle on Ice. It's like the last really great moment, I think, especially in U.S. I mean, definitely in U.S. Olympic hockey, but so memorable. Of course, they made a movie about it and everything else. Chi-Town says, shot heard round the world. He's going Bobby Thompson. I'd go back in time and I would be standing next to Willie Mays in the on deck circle. Is where I'd be if I went back to Bobby Thompson. I've always wanted to be in black and white, so I would go back there as well. All right, some good ones. Good stuff tonight. And once again, don't forget, we mentioned this earlier, the Chad Tough auction that is going on. I posted the link, and I'll go ahead and post it again right now since it kind of got caught up. There are a lot of different things that you can place a bid on in this auction, and the big one is a package of 4 for the Notre Dame USC game. You're going to get to walk the walk from the Basilica. You're going to get down on the field and all different kinds of cool stuff. It is for 4 people, and if you go to that link, the givesmart.com, it is e.givesmart.com/events. It is the auction for the Chad Tough fight against DIPG. That is what that is for, a rare form of cancer. CJ Carr's brother Chad, who passed away from that, and his family founded the organization Chad Tough to fight against DIPG. Jesse made it through. We only had one cutout tonight, so that's good. Appreciate it. Hopefully your phone, stays golden. You stay golden.
No, I appreciate it. I'll have to, I'm on to my next hit, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that's right. I'm sure Salty thinks he knows what you mean. All right, have a great time or have a great night. Don't forget, smash the like button and, of course, subscribe, rate, and review. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.